Hey folks, Roscoe here. And I just finished my chores and I thought I'd make a quick video about an issue. Um, it's one of the ones that politicians bounce in front of us like a ball in front of a dog, so we won't pay attention to what it is they're really doing because we're always arguing about it. And the reality is we mostly agree on it. I don't know any Americans I've ever met, and none of my friends and acquaintances think that firearms deaths are a good thing, and I know they all believe we should have fewer of them. So I've thought about this, of course, over the years, like most Americans have. And after looking at things like Everytown's information, the NRA's information, the stuff from the FBI and the CDC, I think I have some ideas we might want to bring up and discuss. And one thing that pops out at you right away is 62% last count of all firearms deaths in America are suicides. Well, by the time an individual is in such a dark place that killing themselves is the only way to end their pain, I don't think having a firearm is going to make a lot of difference. This morning doing chores, I could have killed myself 10 or 15 times on my farm and never used a firearm. What a person in that situation needs is not more laws. What they need is help from a mental health care professional who can help people with depression. And the reality is we live in a culture where unless you're fabulously wealthy or you have a really great health care plan from your employer, you don't get to go see a mental health care professional. So one thing I think we could do is provide our brothers and sisters who are suffering from depression with some high quality, non-stigmatized mental health care. And that's a win-win for everyone. We could eliminate 60% of the firearms deaths right there. And that drops our level, our deaths way down. And it also doesn't make anyone feel like their Second Amendment or rights are being infringed, and it doesn't. It brings these people back into our culture where they can be productive members of society because they're no longer suffering from depression. Who else is being killed with firearms, and what's the circumstances of their death? And that's basically about 80 or 90%, depending on who you talk to. Young men of color are shooting other young men of color, and that's a double tragedy for those communities. Reuben Greenberg, a police chief in South Carolina, once said, "A young man who's given a place at the table and a piece of the pie does not enter a life of crime." And I tend to agree with that. My life experience bears that out, having worked with troubled youth and lived in rough neighborhoods. And so what can we do about that? Well, one thing we could do is pay attention to the fact that young men's brains have not developed before their bodies have. And it's one reason the Marine Corps loves that, because they can get them to do crazy things. And at that point in a young man's life, he needs a mentor. And the most troubled kids I've known have no mentor. And I don't know, it's a complicated thing. It'd be difficult, but maybe we need to do a difficult thing here and find some way to mentor these young men who need to get through this part of their life. Because the truth is, by the time they're 30, they're pretty much done with this, if they're still alive. Another is that what is wrong with Americans in education? You know, kids are eating at franchises of the Taco Bell or vending machines in high schools, and that's okay with people. We pay teachers practically the lowest wage in our society, and then we wonder what's wrong with education. I have friends who have 2 or 3 cars, big screen TVs, they eat at restaurants, and when you talk about education, they say, it's too expensive, we can't pay more. Well, we can't afford to not pay for that. If you don't give a young man the tools he needs with a good education to improve his circumstance, then he's going to end up in a crime-ridden environment and he's going to become violent. We have to give these people the tools they need. Now, I'm not for giving anybody anything because I think it's dehumanizing. But I am, as a culture, for providing the tools a person needs to reach their full potential. And I think these are some things we could do that would help solve that issue about firearm deaths in America. And then the last one is the big one, the bugaboo, the mass killings. And let's get this clear. Less than 1 or 2% on any given year of all the killings with guns in America are mass shootings. They're flashy and they make great news, but they are not the big serious issue. And it is also the most divisive issue. It's the issue that allows Whoopi Goldberg to say no one in America should own a carbine, or Rosie O'Donnell to yell at Tom Selleck when he's on her television show, or the NRA to tell everyone you need to put a pistol in your pocket all the time. And those are all just out to lunch, all those things. We need to stop doing that and talk about what is the problem and how do we fix it. And I went back and looked at a couple of dozen mass shootings and what were their circumstances and what sort of guns were used and how would these laws and things being proposed affect that. So let's talk about gun bans. Well, firearms check, background checks. It turns out most of the guns, oh, well, I think all of them were bought. I think all the ones were bought. There may have been one that was not bought with a background check, but they were bought with background checks and bought legally. And so passing more laws about background checks would not have stopped those shootings. So why pass a law that's not going to have any effect? And then the same thing with, you would think all of these shootings are done with magazine-fed carbines. Well, they're not. Of the 24 I looked at, only 3 were done with a rifle of any sort. And the truth is, in America, double the number of people are killed every year with bare hands than are killed with rifles. So I could go around to every home in America, seize every rifle, chop it up and melt it down, and I would affect the death by firearms in America almost not at all. So someone that tells you that a assault weapons ban is going to solve the mass shooting issue is just, they're either misinformed or they have some sort of agenda that it's not clear to me. So passing stupid laws that are not based on any reality, that are not going to affect anything, all they do is add a level of bureaucracy to the government, and they don't really help anything. They just make people feel good. They can pat themselves on the back and say, I was tough on guns. I passed the law on guns. And that's not what we need. It's like a friend of mine that has an SUV. He drives his wife and his one child around in a car that would fit 17 people, shops at the Walmart, and eats out at fast food restaurants. And then to make himself feel like he's doing a good thing, he donates money to the Sierra Club. Well, the real solution there is for him to sell that SUV and get a reasonable car, stop eating at fast food and cook at home, and stop shopping at the Walmart, and he wouldn't have to donate any money to the Sierra Club, and he'd be doing more for the environment. And so, that's how people approach gun control. They just pass something that sounds good in a sound bite and not really actually do anything about the problem. So what is the issue? That would probably help. And I think it's a cultural thing. People in Switzerland and Canada have guns. They don't shoot each other like we do. And when you read these young men's writings before they go to do these things, and they're crazy and they write things down and you can read them, they want fame and notoriety. So what happens? What do? We give them fame and notoriety. So I'm for maybe as a culture, we black out their image, we black out their name. When they do this sort of thing, I want them to feel like they've just fallen into the abyss and no one will ever hear of them again. I don't want to know their mama's name. I don't want to know what their girlfriend has to say. I don't care what their roommate thinks about it. And you shouldn't either. And people like CNN and Fox and those people that put this stuff on 24 hours a day for 2 or 3 weeks after it occurs, they are promoting it. They are causing these things to happen more often, not less often. And so they need to stop doing that. And we need to stop watching it. And make no mistake, these people that run CNN and Fox, they're people of power and wealth, and they want you to be frightened, and they want you to continue to argue about things so that you don't make any substantive changes. So that's my take on it. We all agree we want less deaths by firearms in America. I think if we were to provide some decent health care for people suffering from depression, that would be a big start. Find some way to take care of the troubled youth that live in our rough neighborhoods would be another great start. And then not make people famous who do mean things to other people. That would be another great thing we could do as a culture. That's my thought on this. If you have any thoughts or comments, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to get a conversation going on this. And that's all I have on this today. So Roscoe out.